Breaking news out of Ottawa, and what just unfolded in the past 48 hours represents one of the most stunning diplomatic reversals in modern North American trade history. The Trump administration, after weeks of aggressive tariff threats and hardline trade rhetoric, has quietly reached out to Canada requesting emergency aluminum supplies to prevent a manufacturing crisis across the American industrial heartland. And Mark Carney, Canada's newly appointed special trade envoy and former Bank of Canada governor, delivered a response so devastating in its brevity that it's now trending across every major social media platform. That response, one single word: no. Just no. No conditions, no negotiations, no diplomatic pleasantries. And the implications of that two-letter answer are reverberating through boardrooms, factory floors, and political offices from Detroit to Washington to Beijing. In the next 20 minutes, I'm going to break down exactly how the United States went from threatening Canada with punitive tariffs to desperately requesting their help, reveal the specific supply chain crisis that triggered this emergency outreach, and show you why Mark Carney's viral response represents a fundamental shift in the balance of economic power in North America. We'll examine which American industries are already facing shutdowns, what this means for the administration's broader trade strategy, and why experts are calling this the most significant foreign policy humiliation since the failed Afghanistan withdrawal. The question everyone's asking tonight: how did America's position of strength collapse so quickly into a position of desperate need? Let's dive in. Here's what happened, and the timeline is absolutely critical to understanding the magnitude of this failure. On February 12, 2025, President Trump announced via Truth Social that the United States would impose a 25% tariff on Canadian aluminum imports effective March 1st, claiming that Canadian producers were flooding American markets and threatening domestic aluminum production. The announcement sent shockwaves through manufacturing sectors across both countries. By February 28th, just 16 days later, the Department of Commerce quietly reached out through back channels to Canadian trade officials requesting an emergency exemption for specific aluminum grades critical to American aerospace and automotive manufacturing. That request was politely declined. On March 8th, Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick personally called Canadian Trade Minister Mary Ung, seeking a 90-day grace period. That call went nowhere. Then, on March 15th, something unprecedented happened. According to sources at Bloomberg who spoke with multiple officials familiar with the discussions, President Trump himself authorized a direct communication to Prime Minister Mark Carney. Yes, the same Mark Carney who just assumed office on February 28th and immediately appointed himself as Canada's special trade envoy with extraordinary powers to manage the U.S. trade relationship. The message was straightforward. The United States needs immediate access to 47,000 metric tons of high-purity aluminum for defense contracts and aerospace manufacturing, with delivery required by April 15th. Without this supply, multiple critical programs face delays, including components for F-35 fighter jets, Boeing 787 fuselages, and Ford's electric vehicle battery casings. Let me put that number in perspective. 47,000 metric tons represents approximately 8.3% of total monthly U.S. aluminum consumption. But here's the kicker. This isn't just any aluminum. We're talking about 99.7% purity aerospace-grade aluminum and specialized alloys that only 3 facilities in North America can produce to military specifications. 2 of those facilities are in Canada, one in Kitimat, British Columbia, operated by Rio Tinto, and another in Bécancour, Quebec, operated by Alcoa. The third facility? It's in Alcoa, Tennessee, and it's currently operating at just 62% capacity due to an ongoing equipment modernization program that won't be completed until June 2025. So when the administration imposed those tariffs, they essentially cut off access to supply sources that American manufacturers depend on for products where there are no readily available substitutes. And it gets worse. Mark Carney's response came on March 17th during a press conference in Ottawa. A reporter asked directly whether Canada would consider exempting critical aluminum grades from retaliatory measures, given the urgent U.S. request. Carney, standing at the podium with Canadian Industry Minister François-Philippe Champagne beside him, leaned into the microphone and said simply, "No." He let that hang in the air for a full 3 seconds, an eternity in a press conference, and then added, "Canada will not be granting exemptions, waivers, or special considerations for any products covered under our retaliatory tariff framework. The United States chose this path. They can choose a different one by withdrawing their tariffs. Until then, our position is firm." The video clip was posted to social media by Canadian Broadcasting Corporation at 2:47 p.m. Eastern Time. Within 4 hours, it had been viewed 8.3 million times on X alone. By the following morning, Mark Carney was trending globally with over 240,000 mentions. Political commentators, economists, and ordinary citizens shared the clip with captions ranging from "About time Canada stood firm" to "This is what happens when you underestimate your trading partners." But beyond the viral moment, let's talk about the real-world consequences already unfolding. Boeing Commercial Airplanes Division sent a memo to suppliers on March 18th, obtained by Reuters, indicating that production of 787 Dreamliner fuselages at their facility in North Charleston, South Carolina, may need to be reduced by 15 to 20% starting in April if alternative aluminum supplies cannot be secured within 2 weeks. Meet Cristina Torres, a manufacturing supervisor at the Boeing facility. She's been with the company for 14 years, working her way up from the assembly line. Cristina oversees a team of 37 workers whose jobs directly depend on steady aluminum supply. In an interview with the Charleston Post and Courier published March 19th, she said, "We've been told to prepare for potential temporary layoffs starting the first week of April. These are people with mortgages, car payments, kids in college, and now they're facing uncertainty because of decisions made in Washington that none of us had any say in." Cristina's story is being replicated across the industrial Midwest and Southeast. Alcoa's facility in Massena, New York, which employs 435 workers producing aluminum for automotive applications, announced on March 18th that it's implementing a temporary production reduction of 30% due to supply chain disruptions in specialty aluminum grades. Translation: they can't get the feedstock they need from Canada. Here's the essential background you need to understand. The North American aluminum industry is deeply integrated across borders, deliberately structured over decades to optimize efficiency and leverage each country's comparative advantages. Canada has abundant hydroelectric power, which is critical for aluminum smelting, one of the most energy-intensive industrial processes. The smelting process requires approximately 15.7 kilowatt hours of electricity to produce 1 kilogram of aluminum. Quebec alone generates over 200 terawatt hours annually of clean hydroelectric power, making Canadian aluminum among the lowest carbon in the world. American facilities, by contrast, focus more on specialized downstream processing, fabrication, and integration into finished products. This integration represents billions of dollars in coordinated investment and decades of supply chain optimization. You can't just flip a switch and source equivalent aluminum from China, Russia, or the Middle East because different facilities use different production standards, alloys, and purity specifications. And now here's where it gets interesting. The administration apparently didn't consult with the Department of Defense, NASA, or major aerospace manufacturers before announcing these tariffs. According to a Washington Post report published March 16th, citing 3 Pentagon officials speaking on condition of anonymity, the Defense Department only learned about the tariff announcement through media reports. One official stated bluntly, "We were blindsided. No one asked us about the implications for defense procurement."